it's Julia. Welcome back to my channel. So today's video is one that has been like long requested and long overdue. I try and do these every 6 months, but it's been a year and a half, so cool. Today I'm going to be sharing my updated top 10 current favorite eyeshadow palettes. It's definitely changed quite a bit. A lot of these, I want to say like half of these maybe, I didn't have in the last video. My tastes have changed a little bit, but I still look for the same thing in most palettes, which is good formula, enough versatility where I can get a good diversity of different looks out of that palette. Pretty packaging is a plus, but not a must. But today I have my top 10, which is it's 11 palettes, don't tell anyone.
I'm telling. I'm fucking telling.
And we're going back to the roots today. Eyeshadow palette videos are the core of my channel. Today's Dew Fairy of the day is Hannah C. Thank you so much for having your notification bell on. Grab a drink, crack open a lukewarm one with the girls, and without further ado, let's get into it.
Just answer the question, okay? Please don't play with me right now.
Okay, these are in no particular order, like there's no ranking to these whatsoever. But starting off with probably the most obvious one that you were all expecting. Whoa! Melt Gemini, forever one of my favorites. I gotta be careful showing you guys this one because I did drop this morning and broke the shade Gemini, which I'm just gonna repress in. Melt shadows are very fragile, so they can like crack if you look at them the wrong way, but they are really soft too, so I don't have a lot of problems with repressing them, and they still perform the way they did before I repressed them. But I love this, half kind of grungy neutrals, half very grungy olive tone greens. I think some shadow just dropped into my hand. That's fun. I've had this palette for close to, I want to say like a year and a half, maybe even 2 years now, and I haven't had any problems with any molding or spots coming. I store my palettes in a dark area, but it is still open air, and I do live in Southern California, so we don't have a ton of humidity, but I love this palette. I love all the looks I've gotten out of this one, and I really love the formula in Melt eyeshadow palettes a lot more than their stacks. I haven't honestly been super interested in any of their recent palettes, but Gemini was their first ever palette, and it remains my favorite palette from them. I know I've definitely talked a lot of people into buying this one, but it is still a favorite. Next up is a more recent favorite, but I really fell in love with the Nabla Secret palette as I started using it more. So I just recently did an indie brand spotlight video on Nabla, but the Secret palette was such a pleasant surprise to me. Honestly, when this one first came out, I wasn't super interested in it. The color scheme didn't really speak to me on camera, or at least on Instagram, but I think this is something that really just is so beautiful in person. One of the reasons I love this so much is because of its versatility. So you really do get 3 different color schemes in here. You kind of get rosy toned neutrals or just berry tones up here, kind of cooler toned jewel tones right here, and then true neutrals on the bottom. So because of that, I feel like you can get a ton of different looks out of this palette that don't necessarily all look like they came out of the same palette. Plus, I really feel like you get the best of all of Nabla's formulas represented within this palette. So you get kind of their softer shimmers as well as their more foiled high impact shimmers and duochromes. Their mattes just stay being really good. They're also one of the only brands I know of that like doesn't do mattes with micro glitters, so thank you Nabla for being sane. And I feel like whether you like warm tones, cool tones, colorful looks, very neutral looks, you can get literally anything you want out of this palette. So as much as I love the Dreamy palette and the Soul Blooming, this is the #1 palette that I recommend from Nabla from anyone wanting to try out the brand, because I feel like this, you get to try out literally everything and you get the best of all their formulas. There's not a single dud shade in here, and I love it. Also the packaging, really good. I said it in my Nabla review video, but I feel like the Secret palette is Nabla's version of the Jackie Aina palette basically, which also makes it into this list as a very equal tie with the Soft Glam palette. So I wanted to include at least one of my ABH palettes in here. The Jackie Aina palette, I'm not sure that you can get anywhere other than like Harrods right now. I'm pretty sure this was discontinued, which I don't know why. That's ridiculous. This is simply the best palette that ABH has ever come out with ever. Jackie really like went into the boardroom and demanded the good formula from ABH, and they delivered. So I love everything in here. Again, you can get so many different eye looks out of this one, just like the Secret palette, that don't even look like they came from the same palette, but somehow there is a distinctiveness to this one. So I feel like when I wear this one in videos and I don't even say what I'm wearing on my eyes, there's always comments being like, you're wearing the Jackie Aina palette, aren't you? And I think that distinctiveness is just very powerful. So I love this one. Standout shade for me in here is Zam. This is like everything I want out of a champagne slash rose gold slash almost kind of bronzy, but not too orangey. It's literally just the perfect eyeshadow shade. All the colorful mattes in here perform beautifully. I think they just did an amazing job with this palette. Plus the packaging is awesome. I know a lot of people don't love the velvet outer packaging of the ABH regular palettes, but it's not in the permanent line, which again is bullshit. So for me, Soft Glam is in my top 10 just out of principle. It's probably the thing I use the most. This and Modern Renaissance are the palettes I reach for when I don't really know what I want to do. I just reach for them and I always end up liking the look that I come out with. Soft Glam manages to do a very, very neutral color scheme without being boring. For example, Mulberry, it looks brown in the pan, but it's honestly like a beautiful burgundy shade and definitely one of the most unique colors in my collection. I would say it does edge to the more warm tone side rather than cool toned, but it also manages to do warm tone neutrals that aren't edging on the orange side. It's another palette where I don't feel like there's any dead shades in here. I wouldn't trade out anything in this palette. So these two kind of occupy a two-way tie. I was just going to put one ABH palette in the video, but I needed to include both of them. I did what I had to do. This is very new, so new that I haven't talked about it yet on my channel, I don't think. This is the Alter Ego Artemis palette, and I really love this. They tried something new with the formula for this one. So I was kind of dismayed because I love the Alter Ego regular formula, but I don't know if you can necessarily see the texture on camera, but some of the shades in here are like a cream to powder finish. They're not traditional mattes, they don't have shimmer in them, so they do work really, really nicely in the crease, but they perform the way that a cream shadow would, and they blend out so beautifully because of that texture. It's such a unique formula. I don't really know how else to describe it. I don't think it's any way similar to like the ColourPop Super Shocks, because I feel like the ColourPop Super Shock mattes are slightly hard to blend out, whereas these ones are just such a dream to work with. Alter Ego shimmers are consistently good though, so I feel like that mixed with the new kind of cream to powder finish, as well as some traditional mattes in here, this is just so nice to work with. Kind of in terms of color scheme reminds me a lot of the ABH Master Palette by Mario. Plus, one of the things I don't like about cream shadows is that they don't tend to wear the best throughout the day. These stay really nice and vibrant throughout the day, and I feel like if you have trouble blending out some darker shades like this, particularly like the navy blues in here and the greens, they just perform really nice and creamily, very blendable, very smooth, and they're just really nice to work with. So I wasn't expecting to love this new formula, but I was pleasantly surprised. I don't really know how else to describe it. It's just such a unique formula that I don't have anything else like in my collection. So this is a very recent favorite, but I've been reaching for it very often. When it comes to doing anything like rainbow or colorful or any artistic type looks, my James palette is usually the first thing I reach for. This is by far the biggest palette I have in my collection, and I don't tend to like bigger palettes. Even the Artemis palette, this is 28 colors, which is kind of a lot for me, but for me this palette is a staple in my collection for the rainbow shades in here. I just really enjoy how all the colorful mattes in here perform. They all work together really well, so they blend together very nicely, and I feel like in that respect it's really easy to create a nice rainbow look with these because I know that the colors will interact well. I don't tend to reach in here as much for any of the neutral shades. I really only go in here when I'm doing a colorful look or when I want to do something like straight up Roy G. Biv Rainbow, but for me this is a very dependable formula and a very big like staple palette for me for doing any type of colorful look or like any type of special effects makeup. I haven't bought from Morphe since buying this palette. I know they're doing like a ton of new collections recently and I have not been keeping up with them whatsoever, and I don't think the quality of their like 35O palettes in any way holds a candle to this. I think this is a straight up really, really good formula. Plus, to my knowledge, they haven't changed the formula since coming out with this one, so I think that this is probably the best thing in their line. Something from Kaleidos had to make it into this video, and I will stay standing probably the most underrated product in their Futurism line, which is the Futurism 3 palette. No one shows any love to this palette, and it makes me very sad because she is truly the most beautiful thing I've ever laid eyes on. It's just a color scheme I've never really seen before from any other brand. You don't see a ton of cool toned berry tone palettes like this. I pretty much love all the Futurism palettes. I was gonna include the Salmon Skyline in this video, but for me this one is just my favorite of all 7 of them that I've tried. Incomparably beautiful shimmers in here. Like, what is that? That's so pretty. The mattes in here are awesome. This berry tone shade, I feel like this is a color that is very, very easy to mess up in terms of formula. Packaging is beautiful, really does reflect the color scheme on the inside. Very nice color scheme. It's cool tone, but I feel like it looks really good on pretty much every skin tone. If you like really almost like wet looking shimmer shades or duochromes and very buttery, creamy mattes that don't have a lot of powdery kick up, I think you'll really like the Kaleidos formula. Time after time, the Dose of Colors Friendcation palette always makes it into these videos. This is a palette that I can go for like a month-long streak of not using, and then I'll use it again and be like, wow. Shit never fails. The shimmers in here are what really shine for me. These are the Block Party shimmer formula, so they're this kind of ridiculously glittery, pretty duochromy, just insane. I don't think the swatch even does it justice. They catch the light on the eyes in such a beautiful way. These are just one of those shimmer formulas that people will ask, like, what is on your eyelids? The mattes are really nice too, but I think the shimmer formula is what makes this so special. Pretty neutral color scheme, but again, you have a lot of different things in here, so I feel like you can get a lot of different looks out of this palette. And I think this really, really reflects the personalities and the makeup aesthetics and looks of the two people who made it. I feel like this is equally Desi and equally Katie, and I love that. I love when palettes really reflect the person who made them, and I think they did an awesome job with this one. If Dose of Colors ever came out with a just shimmer palette, another very recent favorite, expect to see this in the Best of 2020 video, but the ColourPop Little Ray of Sunshine palette is now my favorite palette that ColourPop has ever done. This is all yellow toned neutral mattes. So many different things you can do in here. You can do something that doesn't even look like it came out of a yellow palette, the most subtle eye look known to mankind, or you can do something that is just like straight up a beautiful yellow vibrant look. The formula in here, I do like ColourPop's regular formula, but I think this is a little step up. I don't know what they put in here, but the mattes in here are just very, very smooth, not as powdery as ColourPop's regular matte formula, and this just feels like a more expensive, higher quality formula than usual. Plus, in terms of yellow mattes, the one in here, bruh. Highly recommend, and I believe this is in stock right now. This palette is $14. I would gladly pay like double that for this palette. I was between putting this and the Solmon palette from 𝓿𝓲𝓫𝓮𝓼 in here, but I went with the 𝓿𝓲 just because, again, versatility, but also I love the formula in here. I feel like the shimmers in the 𝓿𝓲 palette are just on another level. This palette has the most beautiful duochrome, almost like wet looking shimmer formula. So I'm currently wearing this palette on my eyes right now. I use the shade Dandelion on my lids. And by now, I think I've done 2 different videos, like tutorial style videos with this palette. This, in my opinion, is the best eyeshadow palette that odins has to offer. If you like really beautiful kind of pinky tone neutrals, kind of like the next palette in the video, I think you'll really enjoy this one a lot, but you also get some kind of yellows and warm tones in here as well. Not to sound like a broken record, but the Sailor Moon palette could never. Finally, last but not least, is the Huda Beauty New Nude palette. The concealed shade in here, we don't talk about her. I pretend I do not see. I pretend I do not see. I had to, I'm sorry. But the textured shimmer shades in here are so unique. They have this kind of pearlescent finish to them. Obviously, it's a very neutral palette, but again, kind of like the Francation palette, the shimmers have such a unique effect on the eyes that people will stop you in the streets and ask what you have on your eyeballs. I quite like this one for special occasions. I did like 6 people's prom makeup using this palette, including my own. Plus, if you want some really good like mauve-y pinky tone neutrals and berry shades, this is a really great way to go. Plus, little tip, I don't have acrylics anymore, but even though I don't have nails, I still tend to stab eyeshadows whenever I open palettes, so I like keeping the plastic insert that I get inside of them so that I don't just... I've saved so many palettes from the treachery of my fingernails by doing that, so yeah, little tip. Alright guys, that is it. That is my current top 10 favorite palettes in no particular order. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed down below. I would love to have you join the fam. Follow me on Instagram to see makeup looks with these palettes, Twitter, and TikTok if you would like to be tortured with terrible subpar content. And if you made it to the very end of this video, you get the bonus meme. Love you.
You have to stop telling your friends that there's a better picture of him. There isn't. Just admit it. He low-key kinda ugly.